I mentioned earlier that today we're featuring information both about glass as an art medium, as well as Indigenous stories told through glass art. Here to introduce our main program is club member Stephen Shaw, Classification, Human and Community Services. Steve serves as a trustee for the Museum of Glass and is a great fan of their programs. Steve, the program is yours.
Thank you, Jimmy. I'd like to introduce Debbie Lenk, the Executive Director for the Museum of Glass, to say a few words, and then have her introduce Preston Singletary. Prior to becoming the Executive Director of the Museum of Glass, Debbie has had an extremely successful career working for companies such as Weyerhaeuser, International Paper, and Exxon, overseeing business operations and product development. Debbie has a degree in chemical engineering, as well as her master's in business administration. Debbie has not only proven herself to be an outstanding executive director, but is a leader who continually gives of herself to improve the lives of those living within our community. Debbie, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate those kind words, and it's really a pleasure to be here with everyone today. Preston and I appreciate the opportunity, and I'll introduce Preston a little bit later. I was going to start by just going through a few slides about the Museum of Glass, and then we'll transition into talking about the show we did with Preston and his work. So I'm going to share my screen here, hopefully successfully. See if I can get this into presentation mode. There we go. So hopefully many of you have visited the Museum of Glass down in Tacoma. We're one of 6 museums that are within walking distance in the downtown core. And as you can see with this beautiful morning photo of the museum, we're located along the waterway, the Theophos Waterway. We were built on a Superfund site. We're a relatively young museum. We're just turning 20 next year, and we're excited to be celebrating that. And of course, we're dedicated to glass and glassmaking. A few statistics. We are a nonprofit organization. About half of our revenue comes in from contributions. We love our donors, of course. And about half of our revenue comes from earned sources. A key part of that are the visitors that we host each year. And kind of an interesting fact around that, when you look at our visitors during the summer months and around the holidays, the vast majority are visitors from out of state. So we are a destination. People love viewing glass of all kinds. You can also see by this slide, we host a lot of kids each year through our youth programs. We offer free access in a lot of different ways, and we contribute economically to the South Sound. One of our key distinguishing features is our cone. It's a 90-foot structure that's tilted to the north. And some say it was patterned after the old pulp burners that used to be throughout our area, like you see on the left. Others say it's a symbol replicating Mount Rainier. Others say it's a beacon of hope. I think it's a lot of those things. And most importantly, it houses our working hot shop. And, anytime you visit the museum, you will see live glass making. And I'm probably partial, but I think we have one of the finest glass blowing teams in the world. We also host visiting artists throughout the year for week-long residencies. And these are artists from all over the world. On the left, you can see the maestro, Lino Talia Pietra, who's from Murano, Italy. Preston is on that top right photo. And in these residencies, we host emerging artists through very, very established artists. We want to support their experimentation in glass. We want to support them producing work for galleries. And we want to host and support them in our galleries and exhibitions as well. We also have a lot of community programs, including a lot of them for our youngest citizens. We're known for our Science of Art program. This is taught throughout Western Washington schools, and it's modules like energy, designing tools, predicting patterns, choosing materials. It usually consists of our educators going into the schools for a couple of classes, and then those classes coming to the museum. And most of the time the experiments are with glass. Here you're seeing some oxidation of metal that's going on. We have another program that we developed during the pandemic. It's a virtual program called Junior Curator Academy, and it links art and the humanities. And you can see 3 of the virtual programs along the bottom. They really form the foundation for a teacher to discuss, in terms of art, social issues, political issues, economic issues with their classes. And we're very well known for our Kids Design Glass program. Each month, kids submit designs, and we choose one, and the child becomes the artist in the hot shop, directing our team. And on a very different note, our program for wounded soldiers and veterans, Hot Shop Heroes, we found that glassmaking is very therapeutic, and there's a lot of camaraderie and support, and it's healing for those, particularly with PTSD. Now back to kind of the display and exhibitions. Of course, you can always see Del Chihuly's work on the Bridge of Glass and also in the museum. But we're probably best known for our temporary exhibitions that run 6 to 12 months. And as you can probably imagine, there are not a lot of glass exhibitions that have been developed and that we can rent and just bring into the museum. We actually develop most of the exhibitions ourselves, either through our own curatorial team or with guest curators and artists. And shown in this photo is an example of something on display right now, which is historic René Lalique glass from the 1920s through the 40s. In another gallery, a very different, more unusual show that we developed in conjunction with Pilchuck Glass School. And what are you looking at? An eccentric chorus of artists working in glass. And that really aptly describes this show. And then, of course, one of our favorite shows has been the Raven in the Box of Daylight exhibition that we developed with Preston Singletary. It was in our museum about 3 years ago now, traveled to the Wichita Art Museum, and as some of you heard early on, will be opening at the National Museum of the American Indian in January. We were really honored as a museum to develop this show in conjunction with Preston, a guest curator, Dr. Miranda Velarde-Lewis, and an advisory board that consisted of individuals from the local Coast Salish tribes. We were able to collaborate and produce something that we think is really, really special and an immersive experience. From there, I want to kind of transition over to Preston, and he'll talk a lot about his work. He's a fabulous artist, has trained under and worked and been mentored by some of the best glass artists and blowers in the world, and is also a wonderful person who loves to celebrate his heritage. And this is his Tlingit heritage that's being celebrated in Raven in the Box of Daylight. And Preston, I'll let you maybe introduce what we're going to see here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I plugged in the microphone. It's supposed to make it give better sound. So this was a very ambitious thing for me to do. I was trying to create an immersive experience that was taking you through this very famous story, Tlingit story, of Raven in the Box of Daylight. You can go ahead and play it, and I'll keep talking here. This kind of gives you a little bit of a walk through as the exhibition was set up at the Museum of Glass. So I wanted to create this sort of ability to go from the darkness into the light, and tried to create elements of the story, and as you walk through the exhibition, you get the thread of the story. The sounds that you hear in the background are the Tlingit language, and I also created a sort of a musical soundscape that also blends in different ways as you walk through the exhibition. There's a lot to tell about the story, and I can't really get into it right here, but it is, you know, all of these elements were set up in a very specific way for you to get elements of the story, and also show off, you know, the different styles and techniques that I've developed over the years. It's enhanced with video projection that I actually designed the exhibition with Juniper Shui, who is a video artist and works in the theater. And so with his kind of idea of theater staging and this reveal, this way that you would be exposed to the exhibition, is how we came up with all of this. And so this is the final, you know, back exhibition or back gallery, final stage of the exhibition, which kind of more or less kind of explains or gives some idea of how the clan system was born within the Tlingit tribe, and all the different animal symbols that represent the families in the tribal community. And then, so as I mentioned, it's going to be opening up January 28th at the National Museum of the American Indian at Smithsonian Institution, and it'll be there for a year. So if any of you are out there, I hope that you get a chance to see it. I think it's going to be quite a special iteration of the show, because they're building out certain areas so that it'll be more of a labyrinth as you walk through this iteration of the show. Then I had some, just to give you a little bit more context of my background. I started blowing glass in 1982 as a production glass blower, and I started working with Benjamin Moore, who is on the right-hand side of the screen here. Unfortunately, we lost him earlier this year, but he was a very important mentor to me for 20 plus years. A really good friend, and miss him dearly. Go ahead and advance the slide. So the one thing I really like and found that I really like about glass is it's a collaborative process. You know, you're working with people and on a team, and everybody has a part of this, and all that collective energy goes into the work. That was a shot at the Museum of Glass. A wonderful place, and much gratitude for the partnership that we've had together for well over 10 years. Joe David here is one of my my mentors from the Native community. He's Nuchanov from the west coast of Vancouver Island. Some people know the tribe as Nootka, but they're called the Nuchanov. So he really, I met him in the summer of 2000, and we have a long and deep friendship, and he's brought me into this new awarenesses of details within the work. The earliest work that I developed were reflective of different kinds of objects that were, traditional objects that I tried to mimic in glass. So this bowl, actually, if you turn it upside down, it is the form of a woven spruce root or cedar bark hat. So when I started to play with this technique of sandblasting, I discovered these the shadow effect, which has come to symbolize kind of a spirit within the piece that is revealed when the lighting is correct. So over the years, obviously, I've experimented with different glass making processes and sculptural techniques, and I've learned from different people, and I work collaboratively with different people who help me achieve these shapes. And in each case, these pieces are more reflective of the kinds of traditional objects that you might see in a museum or something. This is, again, a traditional object that is kiln formed. So this allows me to sort of get larger in scale than I can off the blowpipe. But this sandblasting technique is a very simple stencil process with rubber tape that I adhere to the surface and then draw the designs directly onto it, cut out the areas that are to be carved, and reveal those sections, and then slowly wear the surface of the glass down to create the carved detail or expose a color underneath. These are again very traditional. These are basket forms that I've looked at, through books, historic books, and old photos of Indian curio shops where these mountains of baskets piled up, and breaking all these elements down and looking at the geometric designs. This is just an homage to basketry and that category of the traditional arts. In some cases, I'm inspired by modernism, so I try to abstract things to some degree, and this is an obvious sort of nod to Calder. But these I have a lot of fun playing with these different ways of working, and let myself be inspired by modernism and primitivism, which is a huge genre that I'm inspired by. This is kind of a larger sculpture that is a new series for me, of kind of conjoining these bubbles and sculptural forms. And this is something that you may, it sort of pays homage to a small bone amulet that was carved for a specific reason, probably by a shaman, that would illustrate his connections to the spirit world. And my work, I'm really fortunate that my work has taken me around the globe, working to Japan and Hawaii and New Zealand, Australia, and working with other indigenous artists gives me a different, a new perspective on what it is to make art for our current society. And the next couple of images are examples of those collaborations. This is done with a Maori jade carver, Lewis Gardner, and so the green figure on the back is actually jade stone. And so we were, comparing stories, and of course they have the whale rider in the Maori culture, and in Tlingit culture, he's called Natslane. He's the man who created the killer whale. And by working with other artists, oftentimes I'm challenged technically and what I can do and what I can achieve. In most cases, I'm looking to the other artist and their cultural background and trying to bring them into the glass world and show them what the possibilities are with glass. So these two, that previous artist and this artist, are both from New Mexico. Of course, these vessel forms are based on ceramic pots from the Santa Clara Pueblo community, and kind of harkens back to my days of working with just simply blown glass, because classical forms are something that really speak to me. and it was really fun working with these different artists. Yeah, as I mentioned, most of the collaborations I try to, learn from what the artist, what would they like to try, and so this was from Marcus Ammerman, and he's from the mound builder culture, the southern part of the States, and so we developed a whole series of these. I think they're burial urns. And of course, working with Joe David is always a special time when we can work on things together. And this is a spirit figure from the New Channel tribal style. And then so there's two different pieces of glass that are conjoined to make a very tall sculpture, about 40 inches tall. And then Raven Sky River, who is also a Tlingit tribal member, and he is super talented at making naturalistic forms. And so we decided that we would work together on a series of pieces, and this is something we do intermittently throughout the year. Anyway, they're really fun to work on because all of these things are sort of like a canvas to me to put the illustration, the illustration style on. Just a little bit about site-specific and public art, because this is a new direction for me. This piece that you see here is called The Weaver's Welcome, which was done with some Suquamish artists and, or I'm sorry, they're Sklallam artists, and Anthony Jones and Brian Perry, David Franklin. So we made this piece for the Burke Museum. It's on display there. It's about 12 feet tall, cast glass and steel, and it's really inspired. It was commissioned of us for the opening of the new Burke Museum, and so this was a welcome figure. And we looked at objects from the collection to become inspired by some of the details in that piece. This is a cultural arts center up in Juneau, Alaska, and this was really, I was able to bring some of my work back into the home community, which is, the center of the tribal territory, or the Tlingit tribal territory. And so this was quite a large screen, the largest one I've made to date, and it's inside this sort of gathering space. And here you're looking, through these doors, and there's a big giant wall there that is ornamented, as you see, by David Boxley. It's super beautiful. And so anyway, I spend a lot of time up in Alaska working on the Sea Alaska Heritage, and we're advising on how to preserve the artistic styles and teach aspects of the art making, the culture, the language, and all its different disciplines, the art and all its disciplines. This was a public art commission for Anchorage, and this is the Bony Courthouse. So this was sandblasted and then painted glass that you see here, kind of representing a sunrise, and then the background there is kind of reflective of the northern lights. And this is the newest piece that I just installed with my collaborator and friend David Franklin. This was La Diab fish, we called it. So we didn't know at the time that it was going to be the mascot for the hockey team, the Kraken. So this was quite cool. We installed it about 2 days before they had their first event there. So we got it in just under the wire, and happy to, very honored to have a piece in such a prominent location. This is a very large scale casting. This is about 2,000 pounds of glass. And it's basically an homage to my great grandmother, who had a pet grizzly bear as a child, and she was the one that moved down from Sitka in the 20s to the Seattle area and brought the whole family, including my grandmother, to the Seattle area, and that's where we grew up ever since. So I've lived in Seattle my whole life, and this, so this was, kind of extending the tradition. I mean, the tradition of a totem pole is that it's supposed to tell a story. And so this is an homage to her and this matrilineal connection that I have to my tribe. So I always like to talk a little bit briefly about my band called Ku'ik, which means potlatch in the Tlingit language. So this is a band that I have, and we make records. It's kind of like the musical version of my artwork. So I met this fellow, Bernie Worrell, who is quite famous musician in musician circles. He was co-founder of Parliament Funkadelic, and it was a genre of music that I love immensely. And I had the opportunity to meet him when for my 50th birthday. And at that point, my band was able to open up for his band, and then I brought him over to my studio, and he put the idea in my head that we should collaborate together. So that was quite an amazing experience. For 3 years, we worked together. This is the 4th album that's actually coming out next week. Triple LP. We have 4 LPs out, and it's like 4 or 5 hours worth of music, and this is sort of like my opus, because I've always been a musician kind of trapped in the body of a glass blower. So this was how I get my other passion out. And so yeah, we're a 10-piece band. We work with traditional language. These languages are kind of endangered. So we work with the Tlingit, Haida, and now the Yupik language. And we do spoken word, storytelling, jazz, rock kind of interpretation of Native culture. And there's a lot of improvisation, there's a lot of spontaneous, kind of theatrics and performing in masks and what have you. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun when it's happening. So I just thought I'd throw this up for any of you that would like to, keep in touch through Instagram or Facebook. Always posting upcoming events and new artwork and what have you. And a few things on the horizon. We're going to be performing actually in Fremont on the 26th, the day after Thanksgiving. And then I have a Traver Gallery show in April, which is kind of an annual event as well. So you can always see some of the work at the Traver Gallery, as well as the Stonington Gallery in Pioneer Square. So anyway, thank you so much for having me. And I'm not sure if we're going to take some questions or anything like that, or if you had anything else on your agenda.
Preston, we unfortunately don't have time for questions. We did have a few for you. I will tell you that the majority of the comments in our chat were a bunch of oohs, ahs, and gushes about you and the artwork. It was, people were just amazed by your stuff, enthralled by the presentation. I figured they would rather have you continue rather than have me cut you off and leave time for questions, because I got to tell you, fantastic presentation on behalf of all of us at Seattle Rotary. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you.
It was fascinating. Caroline has already put a note in here. I think we're going to try and plan an event to come see you in April, or your exhibit in April. So you are a lifelong friend of Seattle Rotary. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the presentation.
Next, we'll learn about a brand new Rotary Club in our district. Seattle Rotary has sponsored many international and regional clubs in our 112-year history. Shanghai, China, Manila, Philippines, Tacoma number 8, Yakima, and others. Today, we'll learn about a club with roots and encouragement in Seattle 4. The idea for this club developed from discussions in our Seattle for Peace Builders Committee and has actually been incubating for several years. Rotary International has identified cause-based clubs as a vehicle to grow Rotary membership, especially among individuals who might not join a broader mission service club. Today, we're privileged to hear about the Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest, ending sex trafficking. Here to highlight their story is our longtime member and new club president, Virginia McKenzie. She's joined by her president-elect, Susanna Southworth. Please welcome to the podium, Virginia and Susanna.
Thank you, Jimmy. I am so pleased to address my friends here at Seattle Rotary today. So who recalls reading your Rotary magazine, specifically the August 2021 edition? It featured one of Rotary's major club innovations, cause-based Rotary clubs. Single cause Rotary clubs are a new way of doing Rotary. I am honored and excited to be launching and leading a brand new cause-based Rotary club, the Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest, ending sex trafficking. We will look and feel like any Rotary club in 2021 with online speakers, service projects, and grants. So how is it that Virginia McKenzie was moved to charter this Rotary Club? As Jimmy said, the idea for this club germinated right here from the Seattle 4 podium. I remember the beginning clearly. It was 2014. Tom Betts was our president, and going into the presentation, I remember thinking, oh yeah, sex trafficking, it happens in Southeast Asia. It's a terrible thing. In my mind, it was clearly an over there problem. It's pretty common for cities to think that trafficking doesn't happen here. So to help quantify the demand, our presenter, Stolen Youth, put up a fake ad, clearly advertising a 15-year-old for sale, in this case, in Seattle. They got 250 unique responses in just 2 hours. And from the IP addresses, they could see that 80% of the hits were from businesses in downtown Seattle in the middle of the workday afternoon. There was an audible gasp from all of us Rotarians. How could this be? To think that somebody is down the hall and scheduling to buy sex from a 15-year-old? Well, it's truly alarming. Sex trafficking instantly went from an over there problem to a right down the hall problem. I remember feeling a flash of hot anger, deep sadness, and cold fear all at once. It is like a chord was struck deep inside of me. I wanted to engage. Well, really, I wanted to rage, but I just didn't know how. Where would I start? I know I'm not qualified to work with prostituted people, the sex buyers, or the traffickers. What could I do? What could I do? So I started with what most of us do when we learn about a topic. I turned the internet for information, and let me tell you, there is a lot of information to find. I learned how children get lured in, why they stay, and how they get stuck. It was deeply upsetting. It's upsetting because I can see myself in those stories. When I speak about my work to fight sex trafficking, I often get moved to tears and people wonder, was Virginia trafficked? And the answer is no, I was not. I suffered a few bumps and bruises in my coming of age story, as I'm sure many of us did. I was never trafficked, but I can see myself in those stories, especially those stories involving a 13-year-old who gets an older boyfriend and is groomed. Those stories upset me. Actually, there's a clinical definition for what happened to me reading all of these stories. It's called secondary trauma. Secondary traumatic stress is the emotional duress that results when an individual hears about the firsthand traumatic experiences of another. After reading so many stories of trauma, I found myself getting triggered by all kinds of things. Frankly, it's embarrassing to admit because it's not my own lived experience, so how can it be so upsetting? Just thinking about it gets me upset. Sorry, I am an emotional processor, as those of you who know me know. When I looked for ways to be part of the solution, I knew Rotary would be the platform for action. Believe it or not, this new club is not the first single cause Rotary club to address human trafficking. Preceding us are clubs in Minneapolis, Los Angeles, with more to come. In fact, this is such a large movement, it's being featured at the Rotary Zone Institute in September 2022. Addressing modern day concerns like trafficking is attracting new members and re-energizing existing Rotarians. Now more than ever, the world is ready to address sexual exploitation, and Rotary is too. So who are the 23 members of the Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest Ending Sex Trafficking? Let me introduce one of them to you. We have Susanna Southworth. She is our president-elect and my successor. About 10 years ago, she was an active member of the Rotary Club of Des Moines, Normandy Park, while practicing as an elder law attorney. Let's hear from Susanna on why she came back to Rotary.
Thank you for having me today. When I was presented with the opportunity to join Rotary Club of the Pacific Northwest Ending Sex Trafficking, I answered with an enthusiastic yes. As a litigation attorney fighting for justice against corporations and websites that facilitate child sex trafficking, I am excited to expand my personal and professional network with other community leaders. Rotary is intentionally proactive, whereas my work as a litigator is reactive and does not bring long-term solutions. This Rotary Club will help educate our community on how to keep our children safe before they are exploited. As a litigator, I hold exploiters accountable for their crimes. But what I love about Rotary is that it's also very positive. It feels good to be in acts of service to our community. And finally, this Rotary Club fits into my life. I am a litigator, a political science college professor, a wife and mother with 2 teenagers who I also want to keep safe from exploitation. A meeting virtually and only twice a month is doable with my full schedule. I have ambitious goals to learn from Virginia's extensive experience in Rotary and then carry this Rotary Club forward to make a profound impact in ending sex trafficking in the Pacific Northwest and beyond.
Thank you, Susanna. I am so grateful for our friendship and that you are on this journey with me. Seattle Rotarians, as my sponsor club, as our mother club, thank you for your support. Let's please find opportunities to collaborate. We will love to invite you to our service projects and be invited to yours. We're especially interested in projects that address human trafficking and any closely related issues like youth homelessness, juvenile justice, and foster care. Good things happen when Rotarians work together. Please reach out to me if you have any questions, and save the date for our charter party, Monday, January 31st at 5:30 p.m. It'll be in Belltown, and you all are invited. Thank you.
Virginia and Susanna, I'm pleased to note that several Seattle 4 members are acting as mentors for your new club. Collaboration between Rotary clubs as well as with Rotaract and Interact clubs can help build awareness and build resistance to sex trafficking in our region. Our club theme here at Seattle 4 for this year is Rotarians Inspire Hope. Virginia, your club's story will inspire hope for those who seek to break out of sex trafficking, as well as their family members and friends who want to help. Thanks for joining us today with your club story.